Imagine a world where the only way to travel beyond your village was by horse or carriage, where roads were muddy paths that swallowed wheels and dreams alike, and where the notion of freedom was measured by how far your legs or your horse could carry you. It was a time when human life moved at the pace of the seasons, when the rhythm of life was dictated by sunrise and sunset, and when opportunity seemed bound by geography, wealth, and circumstance. Into this world, in 1863, a boy was born on a small farm in Dearborn, Michigan, a boy whose curiosity would one day transform the very way humanity moved, worked, and dreamed. That boy was Henry Ford, from the earliest moments of his life. Henry was different. While other children played with sticks and stones or helped on the farm without thought, Henry's mind was alive with questions. Why does a wheel turn? Why does a lever lift a weight? How can machines do the work that humans and animals struggle to perform? He spent hours observing, experimenting, dismantling, and reassembling clocks, pumps, and farm equipment. These early explorations were more than play, they were the first lessons in mechanics, engineering, and observation. They were the first sparks of a mind that would one day envision cars, assembly lines, and a new way of life. As Henry grew, the farm became both his classroom and his cage. He learned the value of hard work, patience, and discipline, but he also felt the constraints of a life preordained for labor, not invention. The rhythm of planting, harvesting, and tending animals seemed to move too slowly for his imagination. He dreamt of something bigger, something beyond the fields, the fences, and the predictable life laid out before him. It was a dream that required courage, ambition, and an unshakable belief in possibility. And in 1879, at just 16 years old, he took the bold step to leave home and move to Detroit, carrying nothing but determination, curiosity, and a vision that the world had not yet imagined. Detroit in the late 19th century was a city pulsing with industry, opportunity, and the hum of machines. Henry Ford entered this world wide-eyed and alert, recognizing it immediately as a place where his ideas could grow. He apprenticed as a machinist, spending long days in workshops filled with steam, fire, and noise. Every gear, every piston, every engine became a teacher. He studied the movement of machines, the interaction of metal, and the magic of power harnessed by human hands. But Ford was not content to merely observe. He wanted to understand, improve, and ultimately create something that could change the world. Every small engine he repaired, every failed experiment he endured, every sleepless night he spent tinkering in a small rented workshop was a step toward a vision that was larger than any factory or city. He wanted to give freedom and mobility to millions, not just the privileged few. Henry's first attempts to create a self-propelled vehicle were humble, yet revolutionary in spirit. The quadricycle, built in 1896, was a simple four-wheeled carriage powered by a gasoline engine. It was noisy, shaky, and imperfect, but when its engine roared to life for the first time, something extraordinary happened, not just in the machine, but in Henry himself. That moment marked the birth of a dream that would eventually reshape the world, a dream of affordable, reliable automobiles for everyone. It was the realization that human ingenuity could overcome limits, that persistence and vision could transform imagination into reality. Yet, Henry Ford's path was not without setbacks. His first company, the Detroit Automobile Company, failed because investors cared more about profits than perfection, more about short-term gains than lasting impact. Early life, humble beginnings, early curiosity. 10-minute extended version. Henry Ford's story begins in the quiet countryside of Dearborn, Michigan, where he was born in 1863 to a family of farmers who lived simple lives and depended on hard physical labor and discipline. But unlike the rest of the family, Ford was never truly fascinated by farming or the routines of agricultural life. Even as a very young boy, he felt a powerful curiosity toward anything made of gears, metal, wheels, or machinery. Whenever something broke on the farm, whether it was a clock, a water pump, or even a piece of farming equipment, Henry was the first to rush toward it, not because he knew how to fix it, but because he wanted to understand how it worked. This early instinct to explore, dismantle, and learn laid the foundation for the genius he would later become. at a time when most people accepted their circumstances and followed the same careers as their parents, Henry Ford dared to dream differently. He spent hours taking apart watches, repairing small mechanical objects for neighbors, and studying how machines could make work easier. Instead of being satisfied with the comfort of routine, he was driven by an endless hunger to improve things. These small acts of curiosity, repeated day after day, shaped his childhood and built in him the mindset of an inventor. What made Henry unique was not just intelligence, it was his refusal to simply accept the world the way it was. He wanted to reshape it. These early years cultivated patience, resilience, and a work ethic that would later become the backbone of the automobile revolution. As Henry Ford grew older, the quiet farm life felt increasingly limiting to his growing ambition. While his family expected him to eventually take responsibility for farm work, Henry knew his true calling was somewhere beyond those fields. So, at just 16 years old, he made the bold decision to leave home and travel to Detroit in search of opportunity. This was not an easy choice. He had no wealth, no connections, and no clear roadmap. But what he did have was determination, confidence, and an unshakable sense of purpose. In Detroit, Ford began working as an apprentice machinist, learning the craft of engines, metalwork, and industrial machines. It was demanding work with long hours. But he embraced every moment as a learning experience. He watched how engines were assembled, how gears turned, and how power could be created from mechanical movement. These lessons fueled his imagination. Ford realized that machines had the power to change human life forever. If only someone could bring that power to ordinary people. The more he learned, the more he understood that he was meant for something larger than himself. Leaving home wasn't just a physical step, it was a mental transformation. Ford was slowly becoming the man who would reshape modern transportation. Every hour he spent in noisy workshops, every mistake he made, and every engine he studied was preparing him for the work he would one day do. His purpose was no longer just a dream. It was forming into a vision. When Henry Ford stepped into the early 1900s with his growing dream of bringing affordable automobiles to everyday people, he was not entering a friendly world. The automobile industry was dominated by wealthy investors, expensive cars, and small elite markets. The world did not believe that ordinary families or workers would ever buy a motor vehicle. Yet, Ford was convinced that the opposite was true. He believed the future belonged to the common man, not the wealthy few. But before he could bring that vision to life, he had to face a storm of failures, financial pressure, and doubtful investors who were far more interested in quick profits than in building a long-term revolution. Ford's very first company, the Detroit Automobile Company, collapsed quickly. Investors grew frustrated because Ford refused to mass-produce cars that he believed were not yet perfect. He wanted reliability, durability, and simplicity, but investors only cared about speed and money. This created a deep conflict. Ford wanted to build a future, the investors wanted instant results. When the company shut down, many people labeled Ford a failure, saying he was unrealistic and too focused on engineering instead of business. Yet this failure became one of the most important lessons of his life. It taught Henry Ford that he needed more control over decisions, designs, and the pace of innovation. It taught him that true visionaries cannot be led by people who don't understand the vision. It taught him that failure is not the end, sometimes it is the foundation on which success is built. In 1903, Ford tried again, this time forming the Ford Motor Company with a small group of investors who believed in his determination. But the early days were far from easy. Money was limited, the company was under constant pressure, and every wrong move felt like it could destroy everything. They had only one fully completed car when they opened their doors, just one, and that single car had to convince customers, investors, and the entire market that Ford Motor Company deserved a chance. Ford worked long hours with his tiny team, often personally inspecting parts, testing engines, and improving designs. His leadership was not about sitting in an office, it was about working side by side with workers, solving problems with his own hands. During this period, he faced not only financial challenges but also emotional and psychological ones. Rivals mocked him openly, newspapers questioned his decisions, and industry experts predicted his company would collapse. But Henry Ford had something they did not, a powerful vision of a future where transportation was a basic right. Not a privilege, Ford rejected the idea of building luxury cars for the rich. Instead, he dreamed of building cars that farmers could use on muddy roads, families could use for long journeys, and workers could buy with their salaries. This idea was unheard of at the time, completely against the accepted business logic. But Ford never wavered. He believed that if he could build a car that was affordable, efficient, and easy to repair, then millions of people would eventually want one. In the small, crowded workshops of the early Ford Motor Company, every success felt like a miracle, and every mistake felt like a threat. The team struggled with engine issues, mechanical failures, supply shortages, and endless nights of frustration. But they also shared Henry Ford's belief that they were working on something bigger than themselves. There were days when workers didn't know if the company could survive the next month. Bills piled up, production delays increased pressure, and competitors continued to gain ground. But Ford kept pushing. He personally tested cars on rough terrain, improved parts that malfunctioned, simplified designs to reduce costs, and encouraged his team to innovate constantly. He was not simply an engineer, he was a mentor, a leader, and a motivator. His energy became the fuel that kept the company alive. One of the biggest turning points came when the Ford Motor Company released the Model A, their first truly successful commercial product. It wasn't perfect, but it proved that Ford's idea of practical, affordable cars could work. The success of the Model A gave the company the financial stability it desperately needed and created public interest in Ford's new approach to automotive design. But the real magic was not in the Model A itself, it was in what the success represented. It showed the world that Henry Ford was not just a dreamer, he was a builder. It proved that his ideas had real potential. It gave him credibility, influence, and the confidence to pursue bigger innovations. These early years shaped Ford into a tougher, wiser, more determined leader. Every failure became a lesson. Every struggle became a stepping stone. Every criticism became motivation. The world saw obstacles, Ford saw opportunities. The world saw problems, Ford saw possibilities, and it was during this intense period, full of pressure, uncertainty, doubt, and hope, that Henry Ford developed the mindset that would later revolutionize global industry. The foundation of Ford Motor Company was built not on money or luck but on resilience, innovation, and a belief in a vision that only one man could see clearly. These early struggles were not setbacks, they were the sharpening stones that prepared Henry Ford for the massive breakthroughs that followed. Without these difficult beginnings, the Model T would never have existed, the assembly line would never have been created, and modern industry would look completely different today. By 1908, Henry Ford had faced countless failures, financial pressures, and public doubt, yet he had never wavered from his mission, to make automobiles affordable and accessible for ordinary people. That year, he introduced a car that would not just revolutionize transportation but would transform society itself, the Model T. Unlike the expensive, fragile vehicles of the era that catered only to the wealthy elite, the Model T was designed for durability, simplicity, and practicality. It was a car that could endure rough country roads, unpredictable weather, and long journeys, and it was easy to repair with minimal mechanical knowledge. Henry Ford understood that true innovation was not just about inventing something new. It was about creating something that could fit seamlessly into people's daily lives. The Model T was exactly that. From the moment the first Model T rolled off the assembly line, it captured imaginations. Farmers saw it as a replacement for horses that would save time and labor. Families saw it as a way to explore beyond their small towns, to visit relatives in distant cities, to travel for leisure in ways that had been impossible before. Workers saw it as a tangible reward for their labor, a machine that symbolized progress, freedom, and independence. Henry Ford had created more than a car, he had created a new way of life. People could now move freely, explore opportunities, and imagine a world without boundaries. The Model T was intentionally simple, both in design and in function. Ford refused to include unnecessary embellishments, expensive materials, or complicated mechanisms that would increase costs. Instead, he focused on reliability, efficiency, and affordability. He insisted that the car must be easy to drive, easy to maintain, and able to survive the harshest environments. Each component was meticulously tested, refined, and simplified. This attention to detail meant that even a family living on a small farm could own, drive, and maintain a Model T without depending on mechanics or costly repairs. For millions of people, the Model T was the first machine they could truly call their own. What made the Model T revolutionary was not only its engineering but the philosophy behind it. Henry Ford refused to accept the traditional notion that automobiles were a luxury reserved for the elite. He believed that progress should belong to everyone, not just the wealthy. This democratic approach to innovation reshaped society. It inspired a new economy, created jobs, and gave millions of ordinary Americans a sense of empowerment they had never experienced before. Owning a car was no longer a dream, it was achievable. The launch of the Model T also had profound cultural effects. Roads began to change as more vehicles appeared, prompting towns and cities to improve infrastructure. Rural communities that had been isolated for generations suddenly had access to markets, schools, and healthcare that were previously out of reach. People could travel for work, commerce, and leisure in ways that had once seemed impossible. The car became a symbol of freedom and independence, a vehicle for both literal and social mobility. Families could take vacations, explore new towns, and experience life beyond the farm or factory. The Model T reshaped daily life in profound ways that extended far beyond transportation. The Model T also laid the foundation for mass production innovations. The car's design simplicity allowed Henry Ford to implement the revolutionary moving assembly line just a few years later. By standardizing parts and processes, Ford dramatically reduced production time and cost, making the Model T even more accessible to the general public. What started as a simple idea, the desire to create an affordable, practical car, ultimately became a model for industries worldwide, transforming manufacturing forever. Every success of the Model T was a testament to Ford's vision, patience, and perseverance. The car sold millions of units over its production life, cementing Ford's reputation as an innovator and industry leader. But more importantly, it proved that a single person, armed with vision and determination, could change society itself. Through the Model T, Henry Ford gave the world more than just a car, he gave mobility, opportunity, independence, and a glimpse of a future where innovation could uplift the lives of ordinary people. The Model T's legacy continues even today. It symbolizes freedom, equality, and the transformative power of innovation. Ford didn't just invent a car, he invented a movement that reshaped the way people lived, traveled, and worked. Its impact on society, culture, and industry was immeasurable. And it all started with one man's relentless belief that technology should serve the many. Not just the privileged few. In essence, the Model T was not merely a product, it was a revolution. It demonstrated that vision, when combined with persistence, could democratize progress, change social norms, and transform the everyday lives of millions. The introduction of the Model T marked a pivotal moment in history, one that would inspire generations of inventors, entrepreneurs, and dreamers to believe that the impossible could be achieved with courage, ingenuity, and an unwavering commitment to a greater purpose. After the enormous success of the Model T, Henry Ford realized that the true challenge was no longer designing a revolutionary car, it was figuring out how to produce it on a scale that could meet the overwhelming demand. While the Model T had proven that affordable automobiles could transform society, production was still slow, expensive, and labor-intensive. Ford knew that if he could reduce the time it took to build a car while maintaining quality, he could make the Model T even more affordable and ensure that millions more could enjoy the freedom and mobility it offered. This insight led to one of the most revolutionary innovations in the history of manufacturing, the moving assembly line. The idea was deceptively simple in theory but required extraordinary planning, experimentation, and adaptation to implement. Henry Ford studied everything, from meatpacking plants in Chicago to manufacturing methods used in other industries. He noticed that workers often wasted time moving from task to task, and that efficiency could be drastically improved if the work itself came to the worker rather than the worker moving around the product. By dividing the production process into small, specialized steps, and having the vehicle move along a conveyor while workers performed their assigned tasks, productivity could increase exponentially. Implementing the assembly line required not only engineering ingenuity but also careful attention to human factors. Ford understood that a worker performing a repetitive task could become fatigued, frustrated, or prone to mistakes if the process was not organized carefully. He spent months analyzing workflows, adjusting conveyor speeds, redesigning workstations, and introducing standardized tools and components. Every detail mattered: the height of a workbench, the distance between parts, even the sequence in which bolts were attached. Ford's obsessive attention to detail ensured that the assembly line would function smoothly and consistently. The results were nothing short of miraculous. Production time for a single car dropped from over 12 hours to just 90 minutes, and the company's output skyrocketed. What once took a full day of work could now be accomplished in a fraction of the time. This dramatic improvement lowered costs, allowed for higher wages, and made the Model T even more accessible to the average consumer. More importantly, it demonstrated that industrial production could be transformed through intelligent organization, precision, and innovative thinking. The moving assembly line not only changed Ford Motor Company but also reshaped the global manufacturing landscape forever. Other industries quickly adopted Ford's methods. Factories producing electronics, appliances, textiles, and even food products began implementing assembly line techniques to increase efficiency, reduce costs, and improve output. The modern factory, as we know it today, with its division of labor, standardized processes, and continuous flow of production, owes its foundation to Ford's vision. Ford's innovation also had profound social consequences. By lowering production costs, the assembly line allowed automobiles to be priced within reach of ordinary people. Suddenly, families could own cars, travel longer distances, explore cities and towns beyond their immediate surroundings, and experience a level of freedom that had been unimaginable just a decade earlier. Roads, infrastructure, and urban planning evolved to accommodate this surge in mobility. Communities expanded, commerce flourished, and people's lives were forever changed by what began as a simple idea to make production faster and more efficient. The assembly line also forced Ford and his team to rethink labor practices. Repetition could be monotonous, so Ford introduced higher wages, shorter hours, and incentives to keep morale high. By valuing his workers and pairing innovation with humane practices, Ford demonstrated that industrial efficiency did not have to come at the expense of human dignity. The combination of technological innovation and social awareness became a model for companies around the world. Culturally, the assembly line created a new perception of progress and possibility. People saw that complex systems could be designed, optimized, and improved in ways that amplified human potential. Henry Ford had not only invented a faster method of production, he had shown the world that methodical planning, discipline, and visionary thinking could reshape entire industries, economies, and societies. Even today, over a century later, the influence of Henry Ford's assembly line is visible in every factory, warehouse, and production facility around the globe. Robotics, automated conveyor systems, and mass production techniques all trace their roots to the principles Ford pioneered. The assembly line was not just a manufacturing innovation, it was a revolution in thinking, a reimagining of human potential, and a demonstration that careful planning, creativity, and determination could achieve the seemingly impossible. In the end, Henry Ford's assembly line represents more than efficiency or speed. It is a testament to human ingenuity, to the power of vision, and to the transformative effect that one man's determination can have on the world. Through the assembly line, Ford did not just make cars, he made history, reshaped civilization, and set a standard for generations of innovators who would follow in his footsteps. By 1914, Henry Ford had already transformed the automobile industry with the Model T and the assembly line. Yet he understood that a factory is not only a collection of machines, it is a community of people, each with hopes, fears, and the need for dignity. At that time, Factory workers across America faced long hours, low wages, and harsh conditions. Turnover rates were high, efficiency was low, and morale was poor. Most industrial leaders saw this as normal, they believed workers were replaceable. But Ford thought differently. He understood that for a company to thrive, for innovation to truly succeed, workers needed to feel valued, respected, and financially secure, in an unprecedented move. Ford announced the $5 workday, more than double the average wage of the time. The announcement shocked the business world. Critics claimed he was wasting money, risking bankruptcy, and encouraging laziness. But Ford had a broader vision. He knew that paying workers well would not only attract the best talent but would also create loyalty, reduce turnover, and improve productivity. More importantly, it would allow his employees to experience the benefits of the Industrial Revolution firsthand, to afford homes, support their families, and even buy the very cars they built. The $5 workday had an immediate impact. Factories became more stable, workers more committed, and productivity soared. Families that had lived paycheck to paycheck suddenly found hope. Children could attend school regularly, homes were better maintained, and communities prospered. Ford's decision reshaped the labor market and challenged the conventional wisdom of capitalism at the time. Other companies began to study Ford's model, realizing that treating employees fairly was not only ethical but also profitable. Beyond money, Ford also focused on working conditions. Shorter workdays, organized shifts, and attention to ergonomics made the factory environment more humane. Ford believed that a healthy, motivated workforce was essential for long-term innovation. He showed that industrial efficiency could coexist with respect for human dignity. This philosophy not only transformed his factories but also influenced labor standards worldwide. Through this visionary decision, Henry Ford demonstrated that business success does not require exploitation. It requires empathy, foresight, and a willingness to see workers not as cogs in a machine but as partners in a shared mission. The $5 workday was more than a wage increase. It was a revolution in industrial ethics, a social experiment that proved that wealth and opportunity could be democratized alongside innovation. With the Model T dominating American roads and the assembly line revolutionizing production, Henry Ford set his sights on a global vision. He understood that transportation was not just a national issue, it was a global necessity. Ford factories were soon established in countries around the world, including Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Australia. His vision extended beyond simply selling cars. It was about creating infrastructure, employment, and industrial expertise that would transform entire societies. The impact of Ford's global expansion was immense. Factories created thousands of jobs, training programs educated workers in mechanical skills, and communities benefited from new industrial opportunities. Farmers, small business owners, and ordinary families suddenly had access to technology that could increase productivity and improve living standards. Ford's reach extended far beyond vehicles. He was exporting innovation, industrial philosophy, and a model of efficiency to the world. Ford's influence also shaped global industrial practices. Companies and governments studied his methods, adopted assembly line techniques, and reimagined production across multiple sectors. Ford's vision created a blueprint for modernization, showing that industrialization could be scalable, sustainable, and accessible. Roads, factories, and cities evolved as people adapted to the new opportunities his vehicles provided. Through his international reach, Ford became more than an industrialist. He became a symbol of progress, a figure representing the potential for technology to improve the lives of millions. His philosophy of combining innovation, efficiency, and human-centered work practices inspired generations of engineers, entrepreneurs, and industrial leaders worldwide. Ford's name became synonymous with modernity, not only in cars but in the very way industries thought about production, labor, and global expansion. Even with his revolutionary innovations, Henry Ford faced constant challenges. He was criticized by rivals, scrutinized by the media, and questioned by the public. Market fluctuations, labor disputes, and technological limitations tested his resolve repeatedly. But Ford's response to adversity defined his greatness. Where others saw insurmountable obstacles, he saw opportunities to adapt, innovate, and grow stronger. Ford understood that failure was an integral part of success. Mistakes in production. Early design flaws, or financial setbacks were not deterrents, they were lessons. He meticulously analyzed each challenge, sought solutions, and implemented changes to prevent repetition. This resilience, this relentless focus on problem solving, became a hallmark of his leadership. Even personal criticism could not shake him. Rivals questioned his strategies, employees debated his management style, and the public sometimes misunderstood his intentions. Yet Ford remained committed to his long-term vision. He focused on the future, trusted in the power of innovation, and maintained faith in the transformative potential of his ideas. Through these trials, Henry Ford became a symbol of perseverance. His life teaches that leadership requires courage, patience, and the ability to rise above criticism and adversity. Success is not linear, it is the cumulative effect of vision, determination, and relentless effort. Ford's journey proves that resilience in the face of challenges is one of the most powerful forces for lasting impact. By the time Henry Ford passed away in 1947, he had changed the world in ways no one could have imagined. He had not only revolutionized transportation but also transformed industry, labor practices, and society itself. Roads, cities, factories, and economies had been reshaped by his innovations. Millions of people experienced newfound freedom, mobility, and opportunity because of his vision. Ford's legacy is not just the Model T or the assembly line, it is a mindset. It is the idea that technology, when paired with human-centered design and bold vision, can improve the lives of ordinary people. He taught the world that innovation is not reserved for the elite but is a tool to empower society. His influence can be seen in modern mass production, global supply chains, labor standards, and the very structure of modern civilization. Even today, Henry Ford's principles guide industries worldwide. Automation, efficiency, production optimization, and human-focused innovation all trace back to his methods. But more than machines, Ford left behind a philosophy that courage, persistence, and vision can create monumental change. His life reminds us that greatness is achieved not by avoiding challenges but by facing them relentlessly, guided by the belief that one person can reshape the future. Henry Ford's story is not merely historical, it is timeless. It inspires engineers, entrepreneurs, leaders, and dreamers to push boundaries, think differently, and create solutions that matter. Through his innovations, leadership, and unwavering commitment to a better world, Ford proved that true legacy is built not on wealth or fame, but on impact, the enduring ability to change the way humanity lives, works, and dreams. Imagine a world where the only way to travel beyond your village was by horse or carriage, where roads were muddy paths that swallowed wheels and dreams alike, and where the notion of freedom was measured by how far your legs or your horse could carry you. It was a time when human life moved at the pace of the seasons, when the rhythm of life was dictated by sunrise and sunset, and when opportunity seemed bound by geography, wealth, and circumstance. Into this world, in 1863, a boy was born on a small farm in Dearborn, Michigan, a boy whose curiosity would one day transform the very way humanity moved, worked, and dreamed. That boy was Henry Ford, from the earliest moments of his life. Henry was different. While other children played with sticks and stones or helped on the farm without thought, Henry's mind was alive with questions. Why does a wheel turn? Why does a lever lift a weight? How can machines do the work that humans and animals struggle to perform? He spent hours observing, experimenting, dismantling, and reassembling clocks, pumps, and farm equipment. These early explorations were more than play, they were the first lessons in mechanics, engineering, and observation. They were the first sparks of a mind that would one day envision cars, assembly lines, and a new way of life. As Henry grew, the farm became both his classroom and his cage. He learned the value of hard work, patience, and discipline, but he also felt the constraints of a life preordained for labor, not invention. The rhythm of planting, harvesting, and tending animals seemed to move too slowly for his imagination. He dreamt of something bigger, something beyond the fields, the fences, and the predictable life laid out before him. It was a dream that required courage, ambition, and an unshakable belief in possibility. As we reach the conclusion of Henry Ford's incredible journey, it is important to pause and reflect on the magnitude of his achievements, not merely the machines he built, but the world he transformed. Henry Ford did not invent the car alone, nor did he single-handedly industrialize a nation. What he did accomplish was far greater. He reshaped human life, work, society, and the very concept of possibility. From a curious boy on a small Michigan farm to a man whose vision touched every corner of the globe, Ford's life exemplifies the extraordinary potential of human determination, ingenuity, and vision. Consider the humble beginnings that shaped him, a young boy fascinated by gears and pulleys, spending hours dismantling clocks and pumps to understand their inner workings. These were not idle hobbies, they were the foundation of a mind that refused to accept limitations. Every experiment, every failure, every painstaking observation contributed to a larger purpose. Ford taught us that curiosity, when nurtured with persistence, can ignite revolutions. His early life reminds us that greatness does not come from privilege, wealth, or status, it comes from passion, discipline, and a relentless desire to learn and improve. As he left the farm and stepped into the bustling world of Detroit, Ford embraced challenges that most would have found insurmountable. He apprenticed in noisy, demanding workshops, learned from machines and mentors alike, and absorbed lessons that would guide his innovations. These experiences forged not just his technical skills, but his character. Patience, resilience, and the ability to think differently became his hallmarks. Ford's journey demonstrates that the foundation of greatness is often laid in moments of struggle, where vision meets persistence against all odds. The creation of the quadricycle, his first gasoline-powered vehicle, marked the birth of a dream that would redefine human mobility. This small, imperfect machine embodied an idea far larger than itself, the belief that technology should serve humanity, not merely entertain or enrich the few. Every failure in those early experiments was a lesson, and every small success was a step toward the monumental achievements that lay ahead. Ford's life shows us that progress is rarely instantaneous, it is a process, built patiently, deliberately, and often quietly, until the world begins to notice. The founding of the Ford Motor Company was another testament to his resilience. Early investors doubted him. Critics mocked him, and financial pressure threatened to crush his dreams. Yet Ford's unwavering focus on a vision greater than himself allowed him to persist. He saw opportunities where others saw only risk, and he refused to compromise on the principles that would define his legacy: affordability, accessibility, reliability, and the empowerment of ordinary people. The lessons here are timeless. To create transformative impact, one must be willing to challenge conventional thinking, embrace risk, and hold fast to a higher purpose. With the introduction of the Model T, Ford gave the world not just a car, but freedom. For the first time, ordinary families could travel beyond the limitations of their towns, explore new places, and expand their horizons. Roads and communities evolved to accommodate this new mobility, commerce flourished, and society began to change in ways previously unimaginable. The Model T symbolizes more than innovation, it symbolizes hope, progress, and the democratization of opportunity. Through this, Ford demonstrated that technology, when designed with purpose, can uplift humanity. Perhaps even more revolutionary was Ford's introduction of the moving assembly line. By reorganizing production, standardizing processes, and optimizing labor, he reduced manufacturing time dramatically, lowered costs, and made cars accessible to millions. This innovation transformed global industry, inspiring manufacturing methods that continue to influence production today. The assembly line exemplifies a key lesson from Ford's life: that vision combined with methodical action can produce systemic change, affecting not just products, but entire industries and societies. Ford's decision to raise wages with the $5 workday illustrates his understanding of the human element in industry. He recognized that workers are not machines, they are partners in progress. By empowering his employees, improving working conditions, and providing fair compensation, he created a loyal, motivated workforce and demonstrated that business success can coexist with social responsibility. Here, Ford teaches us that leadership is not about authority alone, but about vision, empathy, and the capacity to create conditions where others can thrive. Even as his empire expanded globally, Ford faced criticism, controversy, and challenges that would have daunted any ordinary leader. Rivals questioned him, the media scrutinized him, and the market shifted unpredictably. Yet his resilience never wavered. Through these trials, he proved that true greatness is not measured by the absence of adversity, but by the ability to persist, adapt, and continue striving toward a larger vision despite obstacles. This is a profound lesson for anyone seeking to leave a lasting mark on the world. As we reflect on the legacy of Henry Ford, it becomes clear that his impact reaches far beyond automobiles, assembly lines, or factories. He reshaped human mobility, industry, labor practices, global commerce, and even cultural perceptions of progress and possibility. His life embodies the principle that innovation, when coupled with vision, courage, and persistence, can redefine the future. He reminds us that one individual's determination can influence millions of lives, across generations, continents, and industries. Finally, Henry Ford's story is a testament to the power of vision, resilience, and relentless pursuit of a meaningful purpose. It reminds us that greatness is not merely a result of talent or luck, it is forged in curiosity, sustained by hard work, and realized through courage. From the boy fascinated by gears on a small farm in Michigan to the global industrialist whose ideas reshaped civilization, Ford's journey inspires us to dream boldly, work diligently, and believe in the possibility of transforming the world. His life leaves a legacy that challenges us all, to think differently, act courageously, and pursue visions that can change the course of history.